we're just going to go through a little bit of what we've done over the last 16 weeks and your experience with it, and use this as your graduation call, and then also kind of discuss what comes next. But mostly we just want to focus on what your experience was today. So if you want to tell us your perspective of that real quick in a few words, and then we'll sort of hash it out a little bit.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, so it was definitely like a lot of the training style was kind of a departure from what I was used to. There's a lot more stability work and a lot more focus on effective movement, whereas I would say before a lot of my training was more like powerlifting with more like bodybuilding emphasis. So I feel like kind of getting away from that and focusing more on just moving effectively, because the muscle was there, but it wasn't necessarily tuned the right way. And teaching it how to move the correct way, that definitely made significant improvements in just how not only I moved under the bar, but how I'm just like, I feel moving day to day and how confident I feel going into the gym.
That's great. And I like the way that you put that. That's almost exactly the way I try to explain it to people, is the difference in, sort of the way I conceptualize programming is not like bodybuilding or powerlifting. It's strength and conditioning for whatever you're doing. So in this case, it was strength and conditioning for powerlifting. So it needed to, like you say, focus on making those movements effective and treating those things from a movement side, not just, go get a pump in a different muscle. So, yeah. And you just had a mock meet as well, and that went great. You put a bit over 80 pounds on your hypothetical total there, even though it wasn't in a sanctioned meet. You still made the trip across town to a gym you're not really familiar with, and you still lifted on competition quality plates. So you definitely still changed up from your regular routine, and you still executed all three on the same day. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your perspective of that experience was, before I tell you what my coaching opinion is a little bit?
So I figured, originally the game plan was to compete on that Saturday, but with some stuff that came up, I wasn't able to do that. So I figured, let's try and recreate that setting as accurately as possible so that it's the most reflective of what I would be able to possibly perform in an actual meet. So I went somewhere nearby that had, it was a USAPL sanctioned gym. So they have all the, official equipment, the calibrated plates, the, Texas bars, everything. This way I could kind of make it as exact as possible and really just kind of spent my morning there a good 4 or 5 hours and just kind of going through the movements. And, I was definitely not counting the kilo plates correctly at first. I wasn't, I left about 10 pounds off when I was counting it first because I wasn't counting the collars, which were 5 kilos in total.
Right.
So my warm-ups on squat ended up throwing me off a little bit. I hit 496 instead of 485. I'm like, wow, that felt really slow. And then I kind of was going through counting again, and I realized I'm off by about 10 pounds. So when I hit the 509, which was my second attempt, and then I was considering going up to like 520, 530 on the third, but I kind of wanted to save it for deadlift and see how that would go. So I took a 515 on the third, stayed a little conservative. I knew I was going to hit it, and hit it, I think, very confidently. Not confidently enough to go for 2, but like it was almost there that day. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then just kind of, like I said, going through on the actual like equipment that I would be using. And it kind of opened my eyes to not only how poor quality like commercial gym equipment really can be, but like, moving forward, I fully intend to be using that facility a little more often just to kind of stay more in tune with it. Because while bench didn't do as well as it could have done that day, I definitely feel like because the pad on that bench was so much wider than what I was used to, that definitely threw me for a spin. But I think overall it was a very successful day. And, I was just glad I was able to recreate it as much as possible.
Right. And from a coaching perspective, I think you did a great job. I think that, especially when life throws you a curveball and you still want to, do something I think you did a great job of making that as close to as possible as normal. And then as far as just like a meet day experience for you with where you had been training typically, that would feel pretty similar to showing up. It would be a little bit different. I think you made excellent decisions as far as like where to hit within the ranges for the attempts. The third attempt squat, that was exactly the way you should have done that. Confident call. And then you still hit, I mean, that would be a 5-pound PR on, well, 5.2 pound or 5.7 pound PR on bench in a meet. It's just not technically a meet. So it's, but you did also hit, a 360 bench the week before that looked easy.
Yeah.
And so talking about the wide pads, I definitely think they would throw you off the first couple times, but after you get used to those, if you start using those more consistently and going there, that'll be more comfortable for you for sure. And you'll probably lift a little bit more weight because of the stability. And then the deadlift, I mean, that all looked like that was technically perfect. I mean, those were great deadlifts. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that for meet day execution of a deadlift, taking the weights you picked. And I mean, that's 80 pounds on your hypothetical meet PR. So a little over. So that's pretty great for 16 weeks. And then really there was a little more there on bench too. So that was really added. You really added about 40 kilos to your total in 16 weeks. And more importantly, I think that you're set up for long-term success. Your mechanics on bench are much better. Everything just looks a lot smoother too. All three lifts, as far as how fluid the movements look. If you would have really like watched your lifts before, a lot of them looked really, really great. Especially if you like watched them at like, slow-mo or just like positions at different points. But the fluidity of the movement now is so much better. And I think a lot of that has to do with your stability and just making some of those, some of your training a little bit more movement focused too. So yeah. It's been great, man. It's been great. You're the ideal type of client, man.
Yeah, I try.